The Witcher's second outing on Netflix fixed a lot of issues that people had with its first season, like jumbled timelines and the character design. However, the pursuit of this more polished look also led to some questionable decisions, especially in the story department. How did the fans react to these choices though? Well, keep watching to find out. First up, The Witcher Season 2 was a product of feedback. When the first season of The Witcher dropped on Netflix, it kind of blew everyone away with how well it was made. Most people liked the way it had managed to adapt the source material onto our TV screens, especially considering the fact that we already had a pretty good Witcher story in the video games. And speaking of the games, the show obviously had to live up to the expectations of all those people too, since they were the target audience. One area where it did falter though was with the way it handled the story's flow. Now, fans of the OG Witcher books will know that the reason why the first season floated around different timelines was that it was more or less a one-to-one adaptation. However, while this approach was faithful to the source material, it confused anyone who wasn't already familiar with the franchise. So, in a bid to make things more streamlined and easier to understand, the showrunners went for a more traditional approach with Season 2. They'd finally onboarded all the feedback from Season 1, and it seemed like this was a step in the right direction for the series. Well, that's what we thought anyway, until the review bombing started. Next, fans hated The Witcher's creative liberties. Just a couple of weeks after The Witcher Season 2 came out, the audience review scores started to drop rapidly. Within hours, the audience score went from the high 80s to a very mediocre 63 on Rotten Tomatoes. This was a pretty alarming situation because most initial reactions to the show had been pretty positive, with people loving the way things were simpler and characters were more fleshed out. However, one vocal contingent hated what they'd done to the show. Yep, the book fans were back with their pitchforks, and they were seething at what Netflix had done to their favorite characters. According to them, the show strayed way too far from the actual source material, and some of them even went as far as to say that it didn't deserve to carry the Witcher name. A lot of people also drew comparisons to Season 8 of Game of Thrones, which was a total mess. Of course, overreactions on social media are super common among any fandom, and things get out of hand regularly. With that said though, they did have some valid points as well. You see, there wasn't anything inherently wrong with the story, but the way the show portrayed some of the characters kind of changed the entire narrative around them. For instance, in the books, Eskel is essentially Geralt's Witcher brother and plays a super important role throughout the series. Here, on the other hand, he's kind of a jerk and a womanizer. Oh, and the series doesn't even get close to showing off his significance, and instead just kills him off after turning him into a monster. Now, obviously, if Eskel was one of your favorite characters in the books, you'd be pretty pissed off at his treatment, and honestly, we're not quite sure why the writers went that way. This isn't the only example of the show going this way either, as it continues to add little annoying quirks to characters throughout the season. And now, critics still love The Witcher Season 2. Despite the review bombing and grievances of source material fans, The Witcher is still a fantastic adaptation that holds up super well against any other fantasy show. It's got a big budget, great direction, and some pretty dope action sequences. Plus, Henry Cavill continues to blow us away with his performances as Geralt. Like seriously, who doesn't want to see this massive hunk of a man swinging swords and slaying monsters? And the critics agree with this notion as well. On Rotten Tomatoes, for example, The Witcher's second season is sitting at a lofty 94% on the tomato meter. For context, the first season only had a rating of 68%, so this is already a massive improvement. Also, the set design has seen a massive bump for this season. In fact, in a behind-the-scenes video released earlier this month, we got to see all the props and stages for Season 2, including Kaer Morhen. And guess what? None of it was actually CGI, and they literally built the entire castle, which is pretty insane in this day and age. So, while some of the complaints are kind of valid, they're still coming from a vocal minority, and the show is heading in the right direction. Besides, it's not like a lot of things happen in the source material, and if they'd actually copied everything in the blood of elves, it would have turned into a snooze fest. Moving on, Season 3 will be more faithful to the Witcher books. If you're still mad about what they've done to your favorite characters though, then the next season might change your opinion. It seems like the writers have been keeping an eye on audience reactions, and they've seen the poor reviews. Also, things are ramping up in the story anyway, and at this point in the Witcher timeline, even the books get pretty exciting. So, according to the showrunner Laura Hisrich, they're gonna tread much closer to the source material for Season 3. Not only that, but she also said that some little details that they'd missed in the second season might crop up as well. So who knows? Maybe they're gonna scrap some of that stuff that everyone was complaining about. Even if it doesn't go down that path though, Netflix really doesn't have anything to worry about. The series is as successful as it could be, and most people seem to absolutely adore it. Having said that, though, it's still been super interesting to see how divided the fan opinions have gotten over the past 2 seasons. And we wonder whether that's going to change or not as we head into the next chapter. Next, in other news, Viggo Mortensen reacts to Lord of the Rings prequel show. The upcoming Lord of the Rings prequel from Amazon is one of the most anticipated shows of all time. Called The Rings of Power, the series takes place in Middle-earth thousands of years before the events of the Jackson movies. Now, fans of the franchise are obviously waiting intently to get their first glimpse at this ancient version of Middle-earth. The original trilogy actor Viggo Mortensen, however, kinda doesn't seem to care about it at all. When asked about the show in an interview with THR at Cannes, his response was, "What is that? The TV thing? With Apple or something? Yeah, I'll watch that." Of course, this is a bizarre response from someone who played such an integral role in the OG trilogy, but the actor did clarify his stance later in the interview by saying that he's intrigued by the premise and that it seems cool, which is still a bit nonchalant. To be fair to him though, the Hobbit movies were a big disappointment, so we kinda get where he's coming from. You can't be upset if you weren't expecting anything in the first place. Smart move. Supernatural prequel images reveal Sam and Dean's parents. The Supernatural fandom can't wait to get their hands on the upcoming prequel series, The Winchesters. Following the story of Sam and Dean's parents, the show will focus on how the pair got together and started off this demon-hunting family business. Oh, and Jensen Ackles is also coming back, but he's not playing Dean this time around. Instead, he's more of a narrator on the show, and after a long wait, we finally got our first look at the OG Winchesters too. Played by Drake Roger and Meg Donnelly, the couple can be seen exploring catacombs and graveyards with their friends in classic supernatural fashion. Now, while the images were shown to give us a taste of what's to come, fans have started swooning over the Winchesters instead, saying that they understand why Sam and Dean were so attractive, and honestly, we don't blame them. Deborah Chow reveals new details about Obi-Wan versus Vader clash. With Obi-Wan Kenobi right around the corner, the hype meter is at an all-time high, with fans clamoring for any morsel of information they can get about what's in the show. And we got treated to some fascinating details during Vanity Fair's extensive Star Wars feature earlier this week. Not only did we get our first full look at Hayden Christensen donning the new Vader costume, but we also got some footage of him actually training for a lightsaber duel. Now, this can only mean one thing. We're finally going to see a proper Vader Kenobi fight that doesn't end in 15 seconds. Oh, and you better believe that things would be pretty intense between the two after everything that went down on Mustafar. According to the show's director Deborah Chow, though, this rematch could potentially surprise even the most hardcore Star Wars fans. What are those madmen at Lucasfilm up to, though? Like, what could possibly go down in a Kenobi-Vader fight that'd shock us? Well, she kinda remained tight-lipped on the whole plot thingy, but she did say that there are tons of emotions involved between the two. After all, they were brothers at one point, and even if they're standing on the opposite sides now, they'll never not care about each other. What did you think about the second season of The Witcher? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.